Now, chapter 2 of Esther then starts with Vashti being banished from the kingdom, and the king needs to fill an important job opening. So what did he do? He sent aides to pick out lovely girls from the kingdom, and among those that were asked to come to the palace was a young Jewish girl, a beautiful Jewish girl who was adopted by Mordecai, a Jew who sat in the palace gates, and her name was Esther, or Hadassah. Hadassah was an orphan, and her uncle Mordecai had adopted her. So as a result of the decree, Esther was brought to the king's palace along with many other young girls. But you know what? Esther's presence and her beauty pleased the king so much that he crowned her the queen. She became Queen Esther. Esther obeyed her cousin as was her custom and did not disclose her nationality. Mordecai had warned her, do not tell them that you are Jewish. She asked for nothing other than what the advisor or the one in charge of the harem had suggested to her. So if you look at chapter 2 of Esther, verse 15, you will find that Esther was not a self-centered person. She requested nothing but what Haggai, the king's eunuch, the custodian of the women, advised. And the next sentence is, and Esther obtained favor in the sight of all who saw her. Esther was ushered into a place that she didn't expect, or perhaps she didn't choose to be. But yet she seems to accept her plight and just went with the flow. Wherever we are, we need to believe in who we can be. We need to believe in who we can be and cultivate the qualities God can use. Galatians 5:22-23. I'm sure all of you here are familiar with that, the fruit of the Spirit. Fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. I've been reading a book called Patterns by Mel Lawrence. And patterns are ways to develop a God-filled life. So patterning is a focused commitment to making some habits and character traits the normal, the daily, the consistent. It opens our lives to the person and work of Jesus. Example, love. To start a pattern in your life of love. Nablang mga butang nga nag-iritar sa mo, tanang kita may alas na, no? Nablang nang doga santik kagiblaw, no? Make it your decision to instead make that an opportunity to develop love and self-control. No? Pattern ina. No? So, sigihon mo na nga sigihon. May isa man ka suggestion sa book na to develop love, as you're walking down the street, you see somebody baskin hindi mo kilala, just pray for that person. Make that a pattern. No? A pattern. Cultivating the qualities that God can use. 2 Peter 1:2-10 tells us that His divine power has given us everything that we need for life and for godliness through the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ and through His great and precious promises. No? So believe in who you can be and cultivate the qualities that God can use. We saw that in the life of Esther. She was pushed into a situation, apparently she was pushed into a situation that she really did not want. And all because of her obedience to her uncle and to the Lord. Now chapter 3 then, well, before I do that, there's an example I'd like to give you too. One of my friends has a teenage son who just, basta, kaamuna islaw? No, permi lang sila they don't have a good relationship. And one day, this friend of mine made it her decision, sabi niya, I am the one who's going to change. And she asked the Lord to change her. So she made sure nga tanang mag-isturanay sa sing iya teenage son, nga siya gid ang makagat sa iya dila. And you know what? Because of that pattern that she said, nag-change ang iya bata na teenager. And one day he said, "Ma, why na taga-away no?" Ano suling si Miga ko, siya kabalo ka na? Nag-pray ko sa Lord. I asked the Lord to change me. Because I needed changing. See? Patterning. No? Patterning. Okay, now chapter 3 then. We see where the king appointed Haman as the prime minister. Ang grabe niya, si Haman gusto niya tanan ma-bow down sa iya. Well, si Mordecai, who sat at the king's gates, refused to bow down to Haman because he would not, being a Jew, the only person he would bow down to was God. So Haman found out about it and it made him mad. So ginreport niya sa king. Siya, "King, there is a certain race who has refused to obey your laws, and it is not in the interest of the king to let them live. If it pleases you, please issue a decree to have them killed, and I will pay $20 million, the equivalent, for the expenses involved in this purge." Siyempre, nanong tabo sa city. It caused panic, despair among the Jews. So chapter 4, we see where Mordecai tore his clothes in despair, and Esther, Queen Esther, she was looking out the window, saw her uncle mourning. And so she asked her maids, "Find out what's wrong." And what Mordecai did was that he sent her a copy of the decree that doomed all the Jews, and asked her, "Please plead for the Jews." You know what Esther said? She said, "You know the king hasn't called me for a month. If I go into the king's inner court without his summons, kag hindi ako pagbatunon, mapatay ako, patyon ako. Because you could only appear before the king if he called you." Mordecai's reply, and this is the key verse of this whole book: "If you keep quiet at a time like this, God will deliver the Jews from some other source, but you and your relatives will die. What's more, who can say but that God has brought you into the palace for such a time as this?" What did Esther say? "Ask the Jews at Shushan, where they live, to fast for me for 3 days. My maids and I will do the same. And then, though strictly forbidden, I will go see the king. And if I perish, I perish." See, Esther had a trusted advisor sa iya kabuhi. Mordecai told her the truth and gave her his support during difficult times. So becoming a woman that God can use, you must seek friends, family who can counsel you with spiritual wisdom. Anong kasami naton gani kung may problema kita? Lagan sa neighbor, kung sino-sino lang yung ginaistoryahan naton, no? Kakisaang mga advice pa sa aton, hindi gid godly. But see here what Esther did. She had a trusted advisor in her life. Proverbs 19:20-21 tells us, "Listen to counsel and receive instruction, that you may be wise in your latter days. There are many plans in a man's heart, nevertheless the Lord's counsel, that will stand." 1 Thessalonians 5:21 tells us, "Test all things, hold fast to what is good." Advisors will encourage your usefulness to God. As we saw in the story, Esther listened to the advice of Mordecai and then listened to God during a fast, 3 days of fasting.